Hello, chess fans. Today, I've got a great battle for you between two of the greatest players of the last several decades. Anand is going to take white against Vassily Ivanchuk, who will take black. In this game, we're going to see Anand offer one of the all-time great exchange sacrifices, but if I can recommend you to watch for two things in this video, it's Anand's patience and prophylaxis after he sacrifices the exchange and slowly prosecutes his incredible bind against the great Ivanchuk. This game begins with e4, and Ivanchuk chooses to meet Anand's opening with e5. Ivanchuk is famous for playing just about everything under the sun, although Anand does say that he expected this opening from Ivanchuk in this game back in 1996. Now, we get an open Ruy Lopez here after bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles. This has been seen many, many times. But now Ivanchuk does try something a little bit new. Instead of the more popular bishop e7 or knight takes e4, for example, he tries the move bishop c5. The Molar defense, although I have to confess I'm not actually sure I'm pronouncing that fully correctly, has been popular at different points as people have tried different things in the Ruy Lopez. That's actually one of the great things about the Ruy Lopez. There's many different variations suiting many different styles of players. It's a really versatile classic opening. So at this point, instead of the more popular and possibly more challenging move c3, Anand tries the move knight takes e5. This probably isn't the most challenging move, but it does get both players onto new ground. After knight takes e5, d4, we have a classic fork trick. Certainly both players saw this coming, and this is established theory. Neither player was surprised by this. After knight takes e4 from black, white plays rook e1, setting up a ton of pressure on the e file. Of course, with so many pieces hanging, there's no way that black can hang on to his extra piece. He's going to have to give it back like right away. The only move is bishop e7, which retreats the bishop, which is of course the piece that black most wants to retain, and it helps dissolve the pressure on the e file. White captures the knight on e4, and the knight retreats to g6. Now, after pawn c4 from Anand, the position is symmetrical. One might not expect that Anand would have a big advantage here, and he probably doesn't have a big advantage, but he does have more space, a little more freedom for his pieces, and this knight on g6 doesn't really impress. A lot of times knights on b6 and g6 are not the best pieces. They often don't have great posts to leap forward to, especially in a case like this where there's no pawn on e5 to provide some outpost on f4 for the knight. So it's not a lot, but at this point we could say that Anand does have some opening advantage. Black castles. Knight c3 is just in time to stop d5, which would be an equalizing pawn break from black. Pawn d6, and then knight d5. Anand is going after the bishop pair, saying, can I have that bishop pair, please? I would like that very much, thank you. And Ivanchuk plays bishop h4. At this point, Anand, in his own notes to the game, says that he was surprised by bishop h4, which makes sense. Like, it looks like a bad move. It looks very, very awkward to put the bishop over here. One certainly doesn't normally want to put bishops on h4. It doesn't do anything over here. The only thing that bishop h4 does is retain the bishop, but that makes a lot of sense because now, for example, if g3, trying to get the bishop to go back so we can have the bishop pair, then the move c6 is perfectly timed. Allowing the capture of the knight is not good for black, but if the knight simply retreats, there's actually a blow for black with b5 here, but we would be able to retreat our bishop, retain the bishop pair now, and white really wouldn't have accomplished anything. So after thinking for a while, Anand comes up with a really wonderful idea, and there's a lot to like in this game, but the next couple of moves really stand out and are to be celebrated. Queen h5 is played in this position, and this move looks promising in that queen h5 always looks promising and threatening, right? We've had we've had enough scholars mates in our lives that when someone plays queen h5, they're like, ooh, this is an attacking move, right? But it doesn't actually seem to do anything because this bishop is well defended. There's no real pressure here or here. Why is the queen on h5? Ivanchuk just goes ahead with his plan, pawn c6. And if you want to pause the video here and try to figure out what Anand did, this would be a fantastic time. So if you played rook takes h4, 2 exclamation marks, then you found Anand's plan here. He is sacrificing the exchange kind of out of a clear blue sky. Very surprising move, and he's willing to do it even though the queens come off the board. So he's going to get a positional bind that after quite a lot of thought and being concerned that this might backfire, he decided he would be able to maintain. He is absolutely correct, and this game certainly holds up, although we should not think that this sacrifice is a winning one if black defends very, very well. And Ivanchuk makes a good effort and neutralizes a lot of the pressure. So first off, knight takes h4 can be discounted because bishop g5 is pretty clearly a strong move. F6 is the best response, but when we capture here, this exchange sacrifice that we offer with the queens on the board and the bishop pair is pretty clearly pleasant for white. There's a lot of pressure that's going to come against the d6 pawn, and our bishops are in no way inferior to black's rooks in this position. This is an easy exchange sacrifice to offer. Instead, it's the queen that captures on h4, and this is a much more challenging move to meet. Now, Anand continues with his plan, which is to trade queens and plop this knight onto b6. This is a beautiful knight in this position because it's going to render this rook over here, which we're threatening to capture, completely useless. Now, it is important to note here that a move that Ivanchuk could have tried was bishop f5, and immediately black can give back the exchange. This has a good chance to draw. It is probably not as good as the defense that Ivanchuk chose, but it is maybe less risky. Anand will retain the bishop pair and a slight advantage, but it will be very hard for white to win in this position. Going back, if we tried rook a7 for black, here we kind of entomb the rook, and we have to constantly worry after bishop f4, for example, about both the d6 pawn and about the rook simply being won by the bishop reaching the square b8. So you can have a look at the notes to see some of the variations here, but this is a very, very good position for white. Instead, the rook tries the b8 square, where it's still in danger of being trapped, but it's at least got opportunities to get out and get active at some points. So after rook b8, bishop f4 happens, extremely natural. Notice that rook d8 doesn't work. You can pause your video if you want to figure out why. Bishop g5 is a simple fork. The knight on h4 obviously is quite loose. Loose pieces drop off, so we get a nice tactic here. So after bishop f4, knight f5 is the only way to defend d6, which is extremely essential in this position. Pawn to d5, moving the attacked pawn forward, also taking away e6 from the bishop and fixing this target here on d6. Very, very nice. One thing you'll notice with a move like d5 and other moves that are going to come is that if Anand is super, super patient. He has sacrificed an exchange. He admitted in his game notes that he was nervous about it and it could have backfired. And you will see that there are variations in the notes where if he had misplayed things a little bit, Ivanchuk could have won. It's easy to sacrifice an exchange, misplay it, allow the rooks to get active, and lose. That's not to say that white's not better here, but there is risk here. And Anand shows extreme patience and control with moves like d5 and the coming moves that we'll see. It's very instructive. Black tries the move rook e8, placing the one active rook he does have on the open file. Makes sense. And king f1 is a great move. We simply take away rook e2, and the seemingly dangerous and active move rook e4 here runs into rook e1, which is very, very nice. King f1 enables this. You can't take on f4 because we have a simple back rank checkmate. Very, very nice idea. And also in general, white doesn't mind an exchange of rooks here because all of the pieces that black would be left with after an exchange of rooks, even though he has an extra exchange, will be very passive pieces and won't really have prospects for activity. So trading the rooks, giving up the only active piece that black does have, is definitely in white's favor. So Ivanchuk tries the move h6, and here Anand points out that h5 was probably a better move because it makes g4 harder for white to achieve. And after h5, there's actually a funny variation here where h5, bishop c2, threatening to grab here and grab here, knight d4, bishop back, knight back to defend d6, is a perpetual that Stockfish points out. And maybe the game could justly end in a draw here after both good attack and good defense. But in this position, after h6, Ivanchuk is already in trouble. He's got some good ideas here. He's thinking about g5 when he would be able to force the exchange of this bishop or make it leave the diagonal where it's attacking d6. Very good move. This move definitely needs to be responded to. He's also creating luft, so suddenly rook e4 is a strong idea because rook e1 will not work. Rook takes f4, and any rook e8 check can be met by king h7, right? So because the king won't get back rank mated, suddenly rook e4 is strong, unlike in the variation we just looked at. So after h6, Anand picks the move h3, intending g4 and gaining luft. It's a great move, very patient, very strong, definitely the best move in the position, very instructive. Rook e4, the bishop simply retreats to h2, and after black captures on d5, of course we're not going to take and allow rook b4 when everything is suddenly hanging. We have g4 in this position. And Anand actually points out that although g4 threatens to simply capture the knight, bishop c2, capturing the knight without any counterplay, is an even stronger threat. So g4 is a tremendous move. Of course, a simple knight move will drop the pawn on d6 and will lose the trapped rook on b8, so we cannot move the knight. At this point, Ivanchuk is losing material, so he just has to get as much material as possible for the material that he's losing. He does have an extra exchange already, so even though he's giving back some material, he can get close to material parity with the best response. At this point, the tactical phase following the exchange sack kind of concludes, and we enter a different phase, a conversion phase, a technical phase that is also instructive. Rook takes c4 is played, knight takes c4, pawn takes c4, and rook e1. This is a really instructive move. We could capture on f5 right away, but after black captures back, actually let's make these moves on the board. Here, there's a threat here to h3. If we capture on d6, we lose h3, and then the rook gets active over here on d8. In this variation, we get something similar to what happens in the game, but it's black's rook who is getting active. White's rook is still on h1. So playing rook e1 first, since the knight on f5 can't really move, is a much, much better move. For example, if the knight tries to go to d4, we have a nice continuation for white. We have rook e8 check, king h7, bishop takes d6, rook b8, and now you don't do this move when black can take, and even though you'll have an extra exchange for white, it's going to be hard to win. A much better move is bishop e5, attacking the knight, and the move knight to c6 is well met by bishop check because g6 allows mate. So bishop e5 is a really, really nice instructive move in this position to gain the win. So jumping back, after rook e1, black tried bishop e6. We take on f5. The bishop takes on f5, we take on d6, the bishop takes on h3, king moves, and black tries moving the attacked rook. Rook e8 check, rook takes, bishop takes. Stockfish actually recommends not trading the rooks, and so after rook d8, Stockfish recommends bishop c2. When the bishop on d6 is not hanging because of a back rank mate, we can keep the rooks on the board. Stockfish likes that better, but I think that I think that Anand is correct to make the exchange of rooks. Stockfish says this is a slight advantage for white, 0.6, only 6/10 of a pawn. But human experience and an understanding of the technique needed to win this position can evaluate this, I think, accurately as a completely winning position for white. The key here to winning this position is to blockade the black pawns. If we can blockade the black pawns, then with the extra material that we have, we are definitely going to be able to create Zugzwang, a position where black has to make moves that are damaging to his position, and we'll be able to win. So the key here is all about blockade. White should be able to achieve that. White should be able to win this endgame. Stockfish's evaluation is kind of irrelevant if we play precisely and we understand this position. So after bishop takes e8, black tries bishop e6. There's an idea to exchange pawns here. We really don't want to allow an exchange of pawns. Every pawn that comes off the board reduces our winning chances for white. So we want to keep all 3 pawns on the board if possible, and again, achieve that blockade. So a4 here, pawn g5, a5, we've locked these pawns in place, and now it's time to try to slowly lock in the kingside pawns. King g7, bishop a4, getting the bishop around to better diagonals. If we can get to the long diagonal, then we'll pin black down to the defensive b7, which is why black plays here, so we can't do this and attack this pawn. Bishop check. There's a little bit of shuffling here. Again, as long as we achieve our blockade, we'll be able to win. We do not want to make an exchange of these bishops. So when black plays bishop e4, we pull our bishop back and we absolutely avoid that exchange. If we make this exchange, black's king is very active and has unfettered access to our light squares. That is not a position we can win anymore. So we keep both bishops on the board. King up and bishop here. c3 seems desirable, but simply bishop b6 check followed by taking the pawn wins a clean pawn. So black is not able to make those pawn exchanges in this position. His king looks active. It doesn't really do a lot. Back to this position. Bishop check, bishop back, again, no exchanges. And we're just shuffling around at this point, slowly encroaching, and after f4 check, king h2, Ivanchuk resigned. It seems like a weird time to resign because white just retreated the king to h2. It's like, why am I afraid of that move? You just played king g3 to h2. Your king is not attacking at all. You know, my pieces look good, look active. But in this position, we've totally achieved that blockade we wanted. None of the 6 black pawns can move without being immediately lost in this position, right? We all see that pawn b5 would allow en passant, right? So we've got that covered. In this position, there's simply no way for black to defend against both bishop f3 and bishop f8. One of these pawns is lost in the next couple of moves, and we'll still retain our blockade after we win one of these pawns, and we'll be able to slowly pick off the other pawns as well. So Ivanchuk realized that Anand had played very well, had achieved his strategic objective, and had a completely winning position at this point, and he surrendered the game. I hope that you enjoyed this game as much as I did. I've seen this game I want to say I saw this game like 20 years ago, and I've always loved the move rook takes h4 and the next couple of moves. But looking at this game, preparing it for this video, I saw a lot more ideas, a lot of prophylaxis, a lot of attack and counterattack from both players, a lot of good defensive ideas from Ivanchuk as he tried, with moves like h6 to slowly uncoil to figure out how he could neutralize Anand's pressure in the position. I mean, even the move bishop h4, which allows Anand to play so well and to offer this brilliant exchange sacrifice, is a very creative move to play c6 and pull the bishop back and keep the bishop pair. There's a lot in this game to enjoy. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you want to check out some more of Anand's games, there's more games that he's done analyzed on this channel for you to check out. Just look at the recommended videos list here, and be sure to give the channel a like, leave a comment on the video, and have a great day. I hope to see you in a future video.